Hey everybody, here's part 2 for documenting your design journey. Again, we'll come back in part 3 and I will talk about some very specific things with a Google Drive based design notebook. And I'll actually have a template or two that I will share with you in part 3. So part 2 is going to be quite a bit shorter. I talked a lot in part 1 about the value of keeping a hard copy design notebook. Please go back and watch that if you have not already done so. In part 2, let's talk about the value of creating design records, of using a formal, like an electronic design notebook, or in this case, Google Docs, versus doing something handheld. One of the things that's really important is that when you create a document electronically, typically you have the ability to timestamp it. Now, technically, you can go into documents and you can alter the dates. If you're using Word documents, you can change the properties. I would encourage you not to do so, but a lot of this just happens automatically if you have your settings correctly. Or if you have them done correctly, you can go back and you can search by the dates where documents were created. You can search by author. You can also customize permissions. And this is one thing that I really want to urge you to be super careful with. As we are sharing examples of design notebooks, and you'll do this with one of your homeworks, make sure that when you provide a shared link in the discussions, that you are sharing a link that can only be viewed and not one that can be edited, okay? But you can customize things so that you have editing capabilities, that you have viewer capabilities and those kinds of things. But again, with Google Docs in particular, pay attention to this. It is also accessible, obviously, across multiple devices. I'm on my desktop computer here recording this presentation. I do a lot of my access. I do a lot of my document creation using either my desktop or my laptop. But then also, again, as is obvious, I can use my iPad to access these docs. I can use my phone. And that is something that is very different. I no longer really technically have to carry this around, although I still do. But I can record all of that design work and have it available, especially if it's accessed and synced with the cloud. Lots of also opportunities for sharing the documents. And another big advantage compared to keeping them as just a series of documents on an individual computer is the backup capability. You're probably not going to accidentally lose documents if you do those on a platform like Google Docs. So when we talk about creating electronic design records, you should use that same criteria that I talked about, the bus on State Street. Everything you do should be recorded. The key question is, can an individual with the same background as you understand your train of thought, your methodology, the decisions you made, so that they could reconstruct or recreate your design with only your design notebook? And again, it can be this type of design notebook or more likely the digital version. Can they reproduce all of the work? And that's really crucial. I've advised students where there's some really key information missing. I had a student within the last couple of semesters. We got toward the second third of BSE 509, and he had done some pretty sophisticated calculations involving providing power with some rechargeable battery systems. So he was looking at volts and amps and resistance. And what we discovered down the road is that things were not working as had been calculated. The life of the device that we were trying to power, it was only lasting about half as long as we might have expected. Well, we went back and we were trying to figure out what exactly had happened. We could not find the calculations. They had been done, but they had been done on a scratch pad someplace, and we no longer had access to those. It turned out that when the calculations were done, we forgot that we were powering two of these devices in an individual unit versus one. All of the calculations had been based on one device. So the calculated battery life was only half of what we expected. Had we had all of those calculations carefully documented, it would have probably been more easy for the team to go back and trace back and easily see what had happened. But we didn't have that. So again, it was a good lesson to be learned for all of us who were part of that process. When we talk about organizing electronic information, and I encourage you, whether you're using a tablet or a laptop computer or your phone, it's really important when you set up a notebook, an engineering design notebook, or really for that matter, any of the data that you're managing with your phone or with your electronic device, it's really critical to have a plan, right? We don't want you to wait and organize information after it has become like this chaotic, like a walk-in closet where you've got files all over the place and you don't have things organized. So that's why I'm asking you, as part of your homework assignments in BSE 508, is to come up with the plan, to come up with the structure, the file structure in particular, and decide, like, what is the information that I want to organize? How am I going to organize it? How am I going to name files? How am I going to name folders? So that as that information gets created, you have a nice, neat closet or a nice, neat place to put that information where you'll be able to rapidly retrieve it in the future. The key here is that digital overwhelmment can become extremely stressful. I would argue it's one of the biggest stressors that I have in my work, is keeping track of everything. And if your space is chaotic, including your digital space, you've noticed I've got a few Post-it notes here around my desk, and sometimes I have to remind myself, okay, clear the clutter, put things away, throw away the stuff that I don't need, put the right things in the right folders, whether it's hard copy or digital. Take the time to do that as you do the work. Total disorganization, number 4 here, total disorganization hampers productivity exponentially, and that's sort of doubly exponentially as our world grows more complex. So think about all these things. How are you going to organize your files? How are you going to like dedicate folders for each parts of the project that you work on? Within those project folders, think about all of the types of information that you will be handling. And again, you'll see that there will be some additional information linked, some samples and examples that we'll cover actually in video number 3 associated with this. I'm just going to draw your attention to one more thing, and then we'll wrap this up. And that is, there will be some information that I'm not going to put on video, but you can find this in the PowerPoint. It's basically this presentation in a PDF format. And that is about the long-term maintenance of design records. So each company, each agency that you may work for is very likely going to have a policy about how you retain design records. Some are going to require destruction of design records over some period of time. Generally, that's over a period of years. Some are going to be required that they be stored in a particular format. Some may require legal review. So many companies, almost any bigger company, is going to have a legal staff, or maybe just one lawyer, but you're going to have some legal people on staff. So you're going to need to be thinking about all of those legal requirements as well. Again, it's beyond the scope of this video, but I have covered a lot here in videos number 1 and number 2. Come back and watch number 3, and I'll do the walkthrough of the Google sample for a design notebook for BSE 508 and 509. I'll see you soon.